Getting started. Sometimes you must be ready to lay down your own rights of entitlement so that others might see the love of Christ. Let me tell you a story. So, like most of us, we were raised in the church, and for some of us, fortunately, we were pastors' kids. I was a pastor's kid, and I was a hyperactive, chubby little boy. Actually, Caleb's story last week of Gus kind of is a mirror of myself, too. And so, my parents had an office, and they were over the preschool ministry, so there was a bunch of snacks in there. And they were in this cabinet, and it was like the good snacks were at the top, so I had to like stand up on a chair and balance and then grab the snacks. But I loved my snacks. One day, my mom had a staff meeting, so I had to be there in the office, and she brought a whole box of Swiss cake rolls. I love Swiss cake rolls. Like, even then, I was in love with them so much, just the creamy goodness. So, they were up there. My mom said I could go get one, so she already knew that I had a system to get them. So I'm up on the chair, I grab one, and then I just wolf it down like most little kids do. Then the janitor, who was a good friend of ours, came in, and my mom gave her a snack cake. I was like, she got one too. Huh. I thought they were mine. And so, as I was wolfing it down, she just opened it up, took a bite, and then she left. She put it down. Later I found out she put it down in her closet where she kept all of her cleaning supplies. So me, being the curious little boy, had to go find that snack cake. So went and found it. There's a little bite taken out. So I said, oh, if I just eat a little bit more, she won't notice. They're my mom's snack cakes that she gave to me, so they're kind of mine anyway. So a few minutes later, the woman in all of her fury that some of her chocolate was gone came into the office and said, hey, I think your son ate some of the snack cake. And I was sitting there with chocolate all over my face and sitting in the corner. I remember it vividly. Panic. Just like, I'm caught. And so my mom says, Isaiah, what do you say? Because she didn't even ask if I did. It was obvious. She said, what do you say? I said, I'm sorry that I ate a little bit of your Swiss cake roll. Will you forgive me? And she's like, of course. My mom gave her another snack cake. So, this kind of relates to the story of Philemon, loosely. So, the story of Philemon, a lot of us are familiar with it. There was a landowner named Philemon who had a slave named Onesimus. Onesimus ran away. He had a run-in with Paul. And as the Bible shows, most people that ran in with Paul ended up becoming Christians. So, Onesimus became a Christian. And then Paul wrote a letter to Philemon, who was also a Christian, appealing for Philemon to forgive Onesimus. In this situation of my story earlier, my mom was like Paul. She appealed on my behalf to the lady, calmed her down, and then she was also like Paul to me, who, like Onesimus, took something from that lady. Sometimes you must be ready to lay down your rights of entitlement so that others might see the love of Christ. So Philemon, historically, if a slave was to run away, they would probably die. That was just the law. In this case, it is implied that Onesimus took something from Philemon. So Paul acts as a mediator in this situation, appealing to Philemon to forgive Onesimus. Onesimus let down his pride in this situation because, historically, slavery is not good. We know that probably wasn't an ideal situation for Onesimus to be in. And so his pride took a hold of him, so he ran away out of rebellion. And then Philemon, because of Paul's letter, was disarmed and forgave Onesimus. Paul did this mediation as a sense to promote Christian unity. A lot of us have been offended before, but I'll argue that offense is not a right that we maintain or possess after we've decided to become disciples of Christ. The gospel disarms us. It disarms our pride. It disarms a hostile situation. When we get offended, we get hostile. That's just human nature. But I'll say this. We can follow this example in Philemon. I have 5 points, or 5 principles. Real forgiveness welcomes the offending person back into our lives. Philemon welcomed Onesimus back into his life. We read this letter of Philemon in the Bible because it obviously worked. If it hadn't have worked and Philemon said, you know what, forget you, Onesimus, forget you, Paul, we wouldn't be reading this letter today. Second, real forgiveness recognizes that God is at work through an offense. Real forgiveness releases the person who wronged us from obligation to us. Real forgiveness recognizes the obligations we have to others. And lastly, real forgiveness refreshes others by its readiness to forgive. We've all been wronged before. Sometimes it's just something as simple as somebody's taking one of your Swiss cake rolls. Other times it's a passive-aggressive subtweet. We get that a lot here. Other times it's outright aggression and offense. I'm a very aggressive driver coming from Colorado. That's just how it needs to be. And down here, people move a little bit slower. That frustrates me. Or they like to not use their signal sometimes. That offends me. But you have to let it go. I digress. In our sin, we naturally have an entitlement symptom. We feel like we have the right to be offended. We feel like we have the right to be angry. We've all been hurt by one another as Christians. Our offenses and offendedness limits the work of Christ in our lives. Ephesians 4:26 and 27 says, "Be angry, and yet do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your anger, and do not give the devil an opportunity." Other translations say a foothold. What I like to think of as a door. The door is an offense. As the offense happens, the door is opened a little bit. And if the door is not shut by forgiveness, the devil will get his foot in that door and continue to pry his way through until the door is wide open. And that is destruction. So, application. If you have offended, ask for forgiveness. If people you know are offended, challenge them to forgive rather than to retaliate. Be a mediator. Be like Paul. Be like my mother, who said to the janitor, "I'm sorry, what can I do?" And then lastly, if you have been offended, forgive just as Christ has forgiven you. Thank you.
Thank you, Isaiah. You know, this is one of those kinds of messages that